Hello, chess family. It's me, National Master Jesse James. It's time for another tournament review. Here we're looking at Tata Steel 2023. This time we got Vincent versus, of course, the GOAT, Magnus Carlsen. We're going to see a beautiful exchange sacrifice, one of my favorite things to do. Let's get to it. Here we go. We start up with d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, d5. Here we got the Grunfeld defense, considered one of the hardest defenses to play other than other fianchettos like the King's Indian defense for black. And of course, Magnus Carlsen says, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And goes ahead and plays this opening by himself. Here we go. Knight f3, bishop g7, bishop g5, the three knights per Trojan variation. Knight to e4, bishop back to e4, knight takes on c3, pawn takes on c3, and pawn to c6. Here this does very well for white, and well, I guess not in this game. Here it was a 40% win rate, so it looks like Magnus came in with some different ideas for this opening. Pawn to e3 gets played, playing very solid, and I can see why white does score so well in this variation. Queen to b3, queen to a5. A lot of times we're going to be putting pressure on this c3 kind of pawn, and very suspicious, you know, in these games a lot of times c5 gets played to really strike on d4. With that being said, because the b pawn is the c pawn's already defending on d, maybe this wasn't the best here, and that's why we see a more solid setup like the c6 pawn. Of course, taking on d5 here would only help out black, because after c takes, maybe the rook will slide over here and again put pressure down this c pawn. So here we go. Bishop e2 gets played. D takes on c4, very standard. Here the bishop now has to move twice. Bishop takes on c4. Knight to d7 here. Bishop to g5, putting a little tickle here on the e7 pawn that's unprotected. Pawn to b5 here, very nice move. Nice little tempo move here. This knight to d7 looks like it's going to help support this c5 idea. The faster you get c5 in, the faster you will get equality in your positions, if not just a better position. Bishop back to e2, rook to e8. I love this move right here. Not only does it defend the e pawn, but maybe e5 ideas in the future. Castles happens, knight to b6. Black's position looks like it's doing very, very well here. You can see that the knight's looking at this juicy c4 square, a4, and even looking to come into bishop e6 over here. And yeah, I'm already loving black's position here. Pawn to e4 got played. Bishop e6. All the black's pieces are in harmony. You can definitely tell that white is not too happy in this position. Queen back to c2. Pawn to c5 here. Again, the faster you get the c pawn to be exchanged, the better your position is going to be. And here d5 gets played. Of course, if you do try to take on c5 here, well, knight to a4 just gets played. And here you can see that c5 and c3 are just very weak here. And black's already in a better position. All right, so d5 gets played. Here white says, you know what, let's go ahead and give me a passed pawn. Bishop g4 here, moving away. And a very, very common idea in these openings is to exchange the bishop for the knight here. Because, well, this bishop is just going to go ahead and have a hard time as there's no good squares on it, just like in a modern Bayoni. So if you could trade it off for the knight or the bishop, you're going to be very happy with this exchange. Bishop back to d2. There's no time to try and save this guy. The c3 pawn was hanging, so bishop d2 gets played to defend it. Pawn e6. The idea of these hyper-moderate openings, exchange, let's break open this center. And it's not so simple just to push your pawns forward here, because something like d6, well, bishop takes on f3. I don't know, bishop takes on f3. You can see that this pawn gets really weak, bishop b5, and you're just going to be collecting this pawn at the end of the day. All right, back to the game. After e6 got played, here rook a b1 got played, developing with the threat, putting pressure on the b5 pawn. But turns out this was not the best move. Tempo move here, just pawn c4. We're going to cut this bishop off and take away some of its great squares. All right, pawn takes on e6, rook takes on e6, of course. Now this e4 pawn is just getting weaker. Here you can see that black is just very happy. It's 3 pawns versus the 2, meaning we're going to be able to create a passed pawn in the future here. And well, here we've got counterplay against this weak e pawn here. White has nothing really to show after this opening. Knight d4 got played. Of course, trades aren't going to hurt you. Bishop takes on e2, knight takes on e2, pawn to a6, very, very solid move. Knight d4 here, little tempo off the rook. Rook back to e8, rook to e1, knight to a4 here. Here that c3 pawn is just really weak, so you can see that this knight is just on a perfect balance. And maybe even ideas about going knight c5 to d3 here too. I mean, this knight is just going places. Knight c6 got played, a nice little harassing move. Queen back to c7, knight back to b4. Looks like the knight's trying to reroute to this beautiful d5 square. And here it goes, knight c5, looking at this d3 square, also putting pressure on e4 over here. Knight to d5, queen to c6. Bishop to g5. And here, well, I'm like black's move here. Bishop g5 set up a simple idea, which was knight to e7 here. And well, black to move. What do you play here? Feel free to push pause and see if you can find Magnus's idea. All right, hopefully you push pause. We'll be trying to figure this out. It's black to move and get a winning advantage here. Here it was the beautiful knight takes on e4. Wait a second, can't we just go knight to e7 check? Yes, you can, and this did happen, but that's why I like to call it, a knight for a rook. Although you're going to be winning this exchange over here, these past pawns, this is just a losing pawn structure right here. You can see that the bishop and knight are just doing too much work over here. Here, as I say, it's just a matter of technique. Rook takes, bishop takes, knight takes on c3, and you can see that this is not a knight. This is a monster right here. This is the octopus, as they call it, with its 8 arms just stretching across and grabbing everything in its wake. Here, unfortunately, these rooks are just no good. So this knight is definitely king of the board over here, especially on the queen side. And well, with the 3 pawns versus 1, meaning we were going to get a pass pawn earlier. Now we get 2 pass pawns here. Just too much over here. 2 pass pawns are definitely going to beat the rook. Rook b to c1, pawn to a5, and I love this kind of move right here. This is just nice, slow, and steady, saying, you know what I'm about to do, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. A nice, slow roll here. Bishop back to g5. Of course, white's not going to give up so easily. Pawn to b4, bishop d2, rook over to d8, activating all the pieces. Pawn to h4. You're more than welcome to go ahead and trade off over here. After bishop takes on c3, not only do you attack the rook, but you're even threatening something like rook to d2. So rook d1, rook e2, it doesn't really matter here. This is already a -5, saying black is the one who is up an extra rook here in this position. All right, back to the game. h4 got played. Rook to d3. Man, you can just see how Magnus is slowly starting to push his opponent off the board. h5, g takes on h5. I love these kind of moves. These are moves that your opponents don't usually expect. Everyone's usually expecting something like, I don't know, pushing the pawn forward, pushing the other pawn forward, and they're going to either play h takes or h6 here to create threats. Here, pawn just takes here. Bishop takes on c3, bishop takes on c3, queen to e2, queen to d5, and this is where the queen's going. Not only is she a very nice piece in the center over here, but she's also working with the rook here. They're just going to be pushing back and even holding on to this h-pawn over here. Notice there's nothing really good with doing checks back here because, well, because the bishop controls the dark squares, once the king goes to this g7 square, it's actually really hard to put pressure on him. Queen e8 check, king g7, rook to e3. Again, you can't jump on the diagonal, so here white's plan is hopefully maybe we can do something like rook to g3, pawn to h6, escape squares if needed, and here queen to e4. I'm sure Magnus must have been very, very happy to see this, as you know that this is just a very good endgame for you. So queen takes on e4, rook takes on e4, pawn to b3, and at this point it's just a matter of technique. Rook takes on c4, b takes, rook to a4. Here we make a queen, takes, and I'm sure white was very happy because they figured, well, this is probably a draw situation. Of course, someone as skilled as Magnus knows that this is actually a very good position here for black. The 3 pawns, you got an outside pass pawn. This is a really key player right here. Plus, he's going to be able to trade off his h-pawn for the g-pawn, meaning it's going to be 2 pass pawns in the future. Let's see some good technique here. Rook d5, defending everything. Rook over to a4. The idea is very simple. We're going to try to keep back Magnus as long as possible. But man, against Magnus, you just know it's just going to be a slow roll, and he's very confident in these kind of positions. King f6, king f1, king e6, king e2, rook f5, f3, king to d6. Of course, the king is heading over to help push this past pawn. Again, we're going to push this guy to kill this one. This king will work with this pawn to start pushing across the board, and then we'll have this pawn to beat this king over here. All right, here we go. Rook c4, rook c5. Of course, trying to cut the king off. Magnus says, not today, my friend. Rook over to f4, rook to check, king to d3, king to e6, rook over to a4, king to f6, rook to f4, king g6. You got all the time in the world here. Rook a4, rook to g5, rook a2, rook e5. Here they could just be trying to waste some time on the clock because you'll be getting extra time on these moves. Pawn f6, g3, rook g5, king e3, and rook takes on g3. Here he doesn't even think about going over here as well. He just goes ahead and makes a blunder here. And well, now you got these 2 h-pawns, which are just going to be rolling across the board. Now it's at a -4.6 here for black. Rook takes on a5. Pass pawns must be pushed. Here it comes. Rook a8. And here, king to h5. Of course, I'm sure white was very much looking forward to something like h3, which would have been a huge embarrassment for someone like Magnus. After rook check, you just lose you're gonna be losing your rook. So king h5 here, stopping that idea, and now the pawn will push again. King f2, trying to harass this rook. That's okay. Rook back to g6, defending everything, and again saying, I'm just going to be pushing this pawn forward. Notice here that, well, although the rook might come into check, as it will, this is not going to be a problem. We can just block it. And this rook is perfectly placed to stop this king from being moved forward. So the plan is pretty simple now. Check, rook up, rook over, h3, pawn up, rook check, and, well, that's pretty much game over. At this point, the king must move away. And here, again, black's just going to continue that pattern of moving the king up and pushing the pawn forward. And that's a very beautiful game here by Magnus. I love the exchange sacks, and he did a very good job in this one. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed that game. We'll see you in the next one.